Wake and Take. I'm Bradley Stalder, your guest host. And yes, it is not Jason Allwine, not J Football Wine today. No, I'm in the hot seat. I'm in the Wake and Take. I've taken my coffee. I'm bringing you the hottest of takes. I'm here to bring you the flaming hot takes that no one in the fantasy industry is willing to give you. But look, this is not just vibes. This is not just my feelings. This is based on the projections that I've run. I looked behind the scenes. I've run the target shares. I've looked at the team totals. I've looked at all of the ways in which these players can win or lose for you for fantasy. And I'm here to bring it for you today on Wake and Take. Be ready. I don't know if you're ready. Tune in. I'm going to have some flaming hot takes for you in this next half hour right after this. We're going to start it off with one of the flamingest hot takes of the year, decade, millennia. Jahmyr Gibbs does not deserve to be a first-round pick. I said it. Oh, you're like, but Bradley, he's a the 1-2 turn. He's sometimes not a first-round pick. He doesn't deserve to be a second-round pick or a third-round pick. Jahmyr Gibbs should be a fourth-round pick. You're like, wait a minute. Bradley. Jahmyr Gibbs was RB5 last year in points per game. What are you talking about? Why are you hating on Jahmyr Gibbs? Don't you live 25 minutes from Detroit? Wouldn't you know how good Jahmyr Gibbs is? He was a first-round pick. Come on. He was points per game, running back 5, alongside David Montgomery. What gives? Let's go. So here's the deal. He's not going to get there again. The reason is, in the games where David Montgomery was out, Jahmyr Gibbs feasted. In the games where David Montgomery was in, Gibbs relied significantly on the efficiency. Like, he had 10 rushes, 8 rushes, 12 rushes for 100 yards. Whoo! That level of efficiency is certainly schemed, and we love to see it. But right now, the pathway for Jahmyr Gibbs to pay off round 1-2, essentially what we're saying is, okay, the only running backs that are going ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs at this point, we've got Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, and Bijan Robinson. That's the consensus, because there's really not a second round running back who's going to be going ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs, right? But here's what the reality. Jahmyr Gibbs is being drafted as though David Montgomery doesn't exist, right? The pathway for Jahmyr Gibbs to pay off the 1-2 turn for you is a David Montgomery injury. That's the pathway. And even if he gets injured, can you talk yourself into, oh, he is above Bijan Robinson? You can't do that. You can't do that. We loved how the projection or how the stats came out for Jahmyr Gibbs last year. Over 50 receptions. He was used sometimes in the goal line. But David Montgomery also had double-digit touchdowns in this Detroit Lions offense. Here's the dirty little secret. The Detroit Lions got better this past offseason on defense. That was their weak spot. They ended up getting into these massive shootouts partly because their defense was not very good. And now the Lions have addressed their secondary with 2 top safeties, cornerbacks. They've addressed their secondary. So they're going to be shutting down some bigger plays. This is going to be a little bit slower, a little bit more disappointing, and it's going to be hard for Jahmyr Gibbs to replicate what we saw last year. Right now, I have Jahmyr Gibbs projected as my running back 19 in best ball value rating, 43rd overall. And you're like, but Bradley, how does he get there? Well, if you think about how the rush shares are split up, it's probably going to be like 40-ish for Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. You have to think that the Lions are not going to run Gibbs between the tackles that often. That is the bruiser, David Montgomery. The Lions love David Montgomery too. They love Jahmyr Gibbs, but they love they love both of their running backs here in Detroit. So you have to think Jahmyr Gibbs, 40% of the rushes, gets him to about 167 rushes, about 700 rushing yards, and 6-7 touchdowns. Sure, that's fine. And then you have about a 15%. I project a 15% target share for Jahmyr Gibbs, which is one of the highest among all running backs in the NFL. That gets him to 80 targets, about 60 receptions, about 350 receiving yards, 2-3 receiving touchdowns. That gets him to running back 19 and half-point scoring. So, no, that's not a pathway to pay off. You need extreme touchdown upside. And the problem is Jahmyr Gibbs has another touchdown maker in the backfield with him. That's David Montgomery. Whew. So fade Jahmyr Gibbs and thank me later. Look, of course you want a little bit of Detroit. Of course you want a little bit of Gibbs. You want to sprinkle in, especially for the high volume drafters. You don't want zero Gibbs. He's a fun player. You want fun players on your team, but fun player doesn't mean he's going to pay off for fantasy, right? So, there we go. Fade Jahmyr Gibbs. He's still a really great player. I think 3rd round, 4th round value. However, we need to be cautious because we have Sam Laporta on this team who commands targets. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown who commands targets. Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta catch the ball in the middle of the field, close to the line of scrimmage, right? Much closer. They're not running 20, 30 yards down the field normally. I mean, Amon-Ra, yes, he can occasionally run that deep route, but that's not his role. That's not Sam Laporta's role. And that scheme eats into those targets as well. So I think that, yes, David Montgomery is going to get his touches. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get his touches. But the pathway to pay off for Jahmyr Gibbs means you not only need him to be that 1-2 turn player, but you need him to be what, for instance, Todd Gurley was at the 1-2 turn many, many years ago, where Todd Gurley became the RB1 overall. You need him to be the CeeDee Lamb of last year, where he was drafted at the 1-2 turn, became the wide receiver 1 overall. That's the pathway for these types of picks to pay off. If there's not a clear pathway to be paying off, you should be avoiding them or at least minimizing your exposure in the big tournaments. So yes, you need to be dialing down your exposure on Jahmyr Gibbs, forcing him into the middle of the 2nd round. Oh, all right. Wow, that was a lot of fire. Let's bring it on. Are you guys ready for the next flaming hot take? I'm here for it. You're here for it. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the Player Profiler channel. If you like the content and find this helpful, make sure you're smashing the subscribe button to the Player Profiler news channel as well. If you're watching on there, if you're not subscribed to the Player Profiler news channel, make sure you are. Smash the subscribe button. We love the Lions. We love what they're going to do on offense. But Jahmyr Gibbs' hype has gone out of control. Second hot take. Are you ready? The burners are on for this one. Michael Mayer is the Raiders tight end you want on your fantasy teams. You're like, but wait, Bradley, Brock Bowers was a generational tight end. He's generational. Please. Yes. Here's the thing. Michael Mayer, also good draft capital. Also been in this offense for a year. Brock Bowers is currently, we'll pull up the Underdog Fantasy ADP. Let's do it. Let's pull it up and talk about where Brock Bowers is going. And look, my projections do like Brock Bowers. He's going as the tight end 10 on Underdog Fantasy right now. Tight end 10 ahead of David Njoku, who is clearly the tight end 1 on Cleveland. Dallas Goedert, who is clearly the tight end 1 on Philly. Dalton Schultz, clearly the tight end 1 on Houston, one of the best offenses in the NFL. Pat Freiermuth, clearly the tight end 1 on Pittsburgh. Sorry, Darnell Washington. He's going ahead of all of those players. And only less than a round behind Jake Ferguson. Look, I think 90 targets is within the range of outcomes for Brock Bowers. But Michael Mayer he's the one. He's the one. Notre Dame product, good enough athleticism, knows how to block, a complete tight end, second-round draft capital last year for this team, for the Raiders. Yes, he only had about a 10% target share last year, but we know how long it takes for tight ends to get going. You also have to think about what are the roles on this Raiders offense. Well, Devontae Adams is out wide. He's getting 30% of the targets, 28% of the targets, however you split it up. You've got Jakobi Meyers, who's going to get 22% of the targets. He's maybe going to man the slot. Maybe he's going to be outside. Trey Tucker seems to be winning the slot role. That's news if you didn't know. It seems as though Trey Tucker is going to be the starting slot receiver for the Vegas Raiders. So mark that down. Note it. He's going undrafted in some best ball leagues, and he's going to be a starter for the Raiders. So, yeah, especially if you want some Raiders New Orleans stacks, if you've got that in your best ball leagues, go be drafting some Trey Tucker as a possible spike week candidate. So then you have Brock Bowers, who has been utilized in a variety of ways in college. We saw how he dominated at Georgia, caught a ton of touchdowns, won down the field. My concern is he may be used in some of the wide receiver role, non-traditional tight end role. Mayer has the chance to stay on the field the whole time. We know that it takes a long time. We saw last year for Michael Mayer that it took forever for him to get full complement of snaps and push out Austin Hooper. Michael Mayer is also very, very good at football. Like, we forget he was one of the top, or it was right behind Sam Laporta in terms of draft capital. So we want to be drafting. The fade for Mayer is he's going undrafted or forgotten about in late. There's now been rumblings that Devontae Adams might get traded. Now we're investigating this. It's certainly a rumor right now, but we want to be ahead of how do these target shares align. Jakobi Meyers would get 22. Brock Bowers would get 20. Trey Tucker would get his 10. But then who's left? Well, the traditional tight end, Michael Mayer, who's good at football, not just blocking, but also receiving. We could see Michael Mayer turn into a George Kittle type on this Raiders offense. We love to see it. And so, like, we are talking ourselves into and projecting so much, and we've seen, right, what it took for Kyle Pitts to pay off his rookie year. Kyle Pitts, 1,000 yards receiving. Yes, but he played primarily as a wide receiver on an offense that desperately needed playmakers. You forget that the Atlanta Falcons offense at that time did not have Drake London. So the Falcons were just rolling out Kyle Pitts as a wide receiver, even though he was traditional tight end. He played majority of his snaps either in the slot or out wide, which is wild. It's just wild that you would have Kyle Pitts do that. And that's what led to these big plays matched up against safeties, is mismatches. And so that's why he was able to get these 1,000 yards, because there was not a lot of target competition and he was playing a different role. Brock Bowers, on the other hand, is probably not going to be playing out wide and have those mismatches. He's going to have to work his way up and not only outproduce Michael Mayer, but he's also going to have to find ways. And we love how the touches will be manufactured for Brock Bowers. We've seen him get the carries, but they're going to be manufactured touches in year one. And the pathway for Michael Mayer to be the tight end instead of Brock Bowers is very real. So, hot take that Michael Mayer, much better value at his ADP than Brock Bowers. All right. Whew. Didn't Theo give a take that Jahmyr Gibbs is top 3 running back? Look, Theo and I, this is why you listen. You listen to the spectrum of takes. Very sharp analyst. I have great respect for Theo, and I heard his takes on Jahmyr Gibbs and why he thinks so. But this was the same reasoning that he gave last year, and Jahmyr Gibbs was a top 5 running back. but I was also spot on with the amount of targets. So yes, we can't plan necessarily that David Montgomery is going to be out. And yes, Jahmyr Gibbs, top 5 running back when David Montgomery is not playing, maybe top 3 running back if David Montgomery is not playing. But David Montgomery, he's still there. But Gibbs is being treated as though Montgomery is not there. Okay, let's go. We want some hot takes. I'm going to give you some hot takes. Hot cakes, hot takes. Let's go. We started with a Jahmyr Gibbs fade. We started with a Brock Bowers fade. Now we're going with some pluses. We want positivity. Positivity here in the Wake and Take streets. But we're going to talk about DeAndre Hopkins a little bit after this.
Oh, hey, it's Mr. Breakout Finder coming at you. The Breakout Finder features 3 key tools: a database of metrics that include speed score, college dominator, breakout age, but also Breakout Finder only stats like dynamic score, level of competition, teammate score. All of these things are part of the overall Breakout Finder algorithm that pinpoints the probability that a player will break out. Everyone's talking about my model does this and my model does that. Well, we give you the data points that go into the model. We have a feature that lets you compare players, and then we give you the precise probability of every wide receiver, every running back, sorted and filterable by class year. So when I'm talking to my friends and I need to show them why I'm so bullish on player X, I pull out the Breakout Finder and bam, there he is. So go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's $5 to get the Breakout Finder, and then a couple extra bucks to get some of these additional enhanced stats. Go download it and thank me later.
That's right. Go download the Breakout Finder today. Here's another hot take. DeAndre Hopkins gets back into wide receiver 1 territory. That's right. DeAndre Hopkins is now going, oh man, it's the fade on DeAndre Hopkins is so sad. So sad. Right now, Hopkins is wide receiver 41. 41. You're like, but Bradley. DeAndre Hopkins, he's old. Tennessee Titans offense, not good. Will Levis, hashtag not good at football. And look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that Will Levis might not be good at football. The Tennessee Titans are going to throw a crap ton, okay? The pass volume is going to be there. A comp that I've talked Ryan Reynolds into, if you follow at Ryan Reynolds NFL, he was very intrigued with this comp. I said, Will Levis 2024 is going to be Jameis Winston 30-30 season. We're going to be very, very happy with how fantasy looks for DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. I'm in on Calvin Ridley, but I'm even more in on DeAndre Hopkins, not only because he's been good in the past, but he is the target earner. When there was talk about what role Calvin Ridley is going to have on this Tennessee Titans offense, Coach Brian Callahan said, hey, Calvin Ridley is going to play the Jamar Chase role. I disagree. I think the coaches are going to look a little bit closer at the film, and it's going to be DeAndre Hopkins who can move around the formation. No. The passing volume is going to be massive for DeAndre Hopkins. There's a couple other things I want you to take note of, different from last year to this year for the Tennessee Titans. Spoiler alert, Derrick Henry's not there. But if you didn't know, if you were sleeping under a rock, Derrick Henry is not on this Tennessee Titans offense anymore. 2, Mike Vrabel, not on this Tennessee Titans team anymore. Vrabel won Coach of the Year a couple years ago, and he was just fired. Vrabel, one of the most respected coaches in the NFL, hard-nosed, defensive-minded, and got the Tennessee Titans to multiple playoff appearances. However, what the modern NFL is finding is that run between the tackles is not going to be getting it done on offense. The rough and tumble, hard-nosed NFL, that can't be the only trick that the pony has. It has to have multiple tricks. It has to have multiple avenues of success for a Super Bowl to be won. We can think back to the LA Rams with Matthew Stafford. You've got Cooper Kupp. You've got others on this offense. You've got San Francisco 49ers who are competing for a Super Bowl. You've got Patrick Mahomes competing for the Super Bowl year after year. You've got Kelsey. You've got Pacheco now, right? There's a lot of ways to win. San Francisco, obviously, with Aiyuk, Kittle, McCaffrey, Debo. There's a lot of ways in which you can win on offense. The Tennessee Titans want to find multiple ways to win on offense. And look, you might agree, you might disagree with that philosophy, but that's how the Tennessee Titans have shifted this offseason. It's not going to be primarily run first, Tennessee. It is going to be pass first and pass often. Oh my gosh. So DeAndre Hopkins is my wide receiver, projected. Let's keep scrolling up. We love to see it. DeAndre Hopkins is my player 20 overall. I think he should be a round 2/3 in your fantasy drafts. He is going to be the target earner. And we've seen Calvin Ridley still step up into a major role as the number 2 wide receiver. We saw it with Matt Ryan on the Atlanta Falcons when Ridley was pegged behind Julio Jones. And now we're going to see it yet again with an aged wide receiver ahead of Calvin Ridley. It's going to be a lot of fun. We are here for not just the fun, but the fantasy goodness. And Hopkins, I have projected for a 26% target share, 135 targets, over 1,000 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. Hopkins is a big receiver. We saw big time winner, 50-50 ball winner down the field. That fits what he wants to do. And Will Levis led the NFL last year in air yards per attempt. So we love to see it down the field. Brian Callahan is going to help coach Will Levis to execute those plays more often. The problem with having a coach like Mike Vrabel is he's not really concerned about winning down the field. His concern is winning just a couple yards here and there, grinding with Derrick Henry. That's not what Brian Callahan wants to do. He wants chunk plays. He wants big wins. He wants Calvin Ridley open in space, DeAndre Hopkins open in space, Chig Okonkwo, Josh Wiley. Also, if you're like in a really deep dynasty league, he's been getting some love at tight end as well. So DeAndre Hopkins as a wide receiver 1 this year, there's a flaming hot take. We are here for the DeAndre Hopkins love. The pass volume is going to be there. The chunk plays are going to be there. You're going to see massive spike. And we saw big spike weeks for DeAndre Hopkins last year as well. We just saw some zeros because, Will Levis. There is no quarterback competition in Tennessee. Last year, if you remember, Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback, won for a significant part of the season until Will Levis finally took over. Well, I mean, there was an injury and Will Levis just kept playing. But Ryan Tannehill got all the snaps with the starters in the offseason. He got the first team reps. Will Levis was not getting the first team reps. Now Will Levis is the guy. And there's no one else behind Levis. Mason Rudolph? No. Will Levis, much better than Mason Rudolph. Even if you don't like Will Levis, you have to admit that. So we are here for the Tennessee Titans offense, that are passing offense, to pay off ADPs. I told you DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver 41, pathway to be a wide receiver 1, and Calvin Ridley right now, wide receiver 35. So both of them, back end wide receiver 3, early wide receiver 4, but we are the market's not taking into account what type of pass volume could be here. So we are here for that. Whew. All right. I've got 2 more hot takes. 2 more hot takes. And then we're going to call it for the day. I appreciate y'all checking out Wake and Take. I'm guesting for Jason Football Wine today on Wake and Take. My name is Bradley Stalder at FF Stalder on the X Machine. I run the news desk at Player Profiler. Make sure you go into playerprofiler.com/news and the Player Profiler News YouTube channel, which is separate from the main channel. You might be watching on the main channel right now and be like, hey, who is this guy giving these flaming hot takes? You know, people said, oh, will they buy these hot, you know, this hot food? And then, you know what? They came out with not just hot food, but flaming hot food, flaming hot Cheetos, flaming hot nachos. We are here for the flaming hot takes. Bradley Stalder here with you for Wake and Take. My first is that Brian Robinson and Jayden Daniels should be going 4 rounds earlier than they are currently going. Right now, Brian Robinson is going outside of the top 100. He's going 106th right now on Underdog Fantasy. Brian Robinson should be going in the 70s. Brian Robinson should be going in the 70s. I have him as a 4-round discount. 4-round discount. And we love the rushing share. I have Brian Robinson projected for a 47% rush share, 800 rushing yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, and 40 targets, 26 receptions, 278 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown, along with, and coexisting with Austin Eckler. You love to see Brian Robinson. He's going outside the top 100 on Underdog Fantasy, probably going outside the top 8 rounds in your fantasy drafts. He is an easy click. Jayden Daniels is a rising tides lifts all boats scenario. And yet you can get Brian Robinson, 200 carries, 800 rushing yards, and the possibility of double-digit touchdowns outside of the first 100 picks. Sign me up for that. We know Austin Eckler is not going to be the running back one in terms of rushing and goal line work. That's not why Austin Eckler was brought to Washington. In fact, there wasn't much of a market for Austin Eckler. I do think Eckler is going to get some of the receiving work, but we also have to temper the receiving work expectation for Austin Eckler in particular, because we know Jayden Daniels prefers to run, prefers to rush, and he's not going to dump it off as much. So if they're going to run, and we know that Jayden Daniels is an effective runner, the defenses will struggle with, is it going to be a run pass option? Is it going to be Jayden Daniels? Is it going to be Brian Robinson? Yeah, Brian Robinson is going to get some lanes to run through. The efficiency metrics for Robinson are going to go up this year because the defenses won't know if it's Jayden Daniels or Brian Robinson rushing the ball. You have to understand the coaches love Brian Robinson. He is a guy's guy. He's a man's man. He is a consummate professional. He got shot in the butt 2 years ago, right? He got shot in the butt. And he came out and still gave you 4 yards of carry after he got shot in the rear end. So Brian Robinson, criminally undervalued right now. Go draft Brian Robinson. The pathway for Robinson to be a top 20 running back is clear. Right now, Brian Robinson is going as, the running back 30. Yeah, he's gone up. He's now 104th overall. 104th overall. Now we want Brian Robinson, especially over a Jaylen Warren. I mean, we like Jaylen Warren's efficiency metrics, but he's not going to get the volume. Okay. Jayden Daniels, also top 5 quarterback pathway. We're talking about a guy who can rush the ball effectively, Heisman Trophy winner, now has some weapons like Terry McLaurin, very good receiver, and is probably the best quarterback he'll ever work with in his career. And you've got Jahan Dotson, who flashed a lot during his rookie year, and I think just was not a chemistry fit with Sam Howell. And you have Luke McCaffrey, the consummate professional who's going to get slot snaps. he's going to win the slot job in Washington. Luke McCaffrey. He's going near the end of your drafts. Draft some Luke McCaffrey. So you've got some really strong players, like at least high floor players for Washington, and the pathway for Jayden Daniels to take off with an effective runner like Brian Robinson and a weapon of Austin Eckler. You've got Ben Sinnott at tight end, right? Ben Sinnott has the pathway to be this year's Sam Laporta. So we like a lot of the cheap pieces on Washington. You can get them very, very late. And Jayden Daniels going as quarterback 10, quarterback 11, quarterback 13, depends on the draft that you're in. But the rushing upside is massive. So we're here for that. Dan Quinn knows how to run an offense. We saw what he was able to do in Atlanta for years and years and years with Matt Ryan. So you know that this scheme is going to be moving. And Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator. So not only is it going to be an offense that is professionally run with Dan Quinn at the helm, but also that it's going to be fast-paced. More plays means more volume. That's going to increase the passing volume that you would normally have for a rushing quarterback like Lamar Jackson. One of the reasons we dock him down a little bit is because we don't get the passing volume. One of the reasons we dock down Jalen Hurts just a tad is because of the passing volume. But the pace of play can kind of offset that. So we can see a Kyler Murray. I like the fantasy comp of Jayden Daniels to Kyler Murray. And right now on Underdog Fantasy, Kyler Murray going as quarterback 7, Jayden Daniels quarterback 11. So you can get a cheaper Kyler Murray and Jayden Daniels. The last hot take, you shouldn't be drafting Brandon Aiyuk. I went on Mind of Mansion a couple weeks ago with Matt Kelly, a.k.a. the Podfather, and we talked at length about Brandon Aiyuk. About how there is no pathway for him to pay off 18th overall. Okay, the pathway for Brandon Aiyuk to pay off is if he gets traded to Washington. That's the payoff. 25% target share for the Washington Commanders is going to get Brandon Aiyuk at least close enough to that spot. Because the passing volume, I already talked about the passing volume being there. We know he's going to get 25% of the targets. The touchdowns are going to be there. He's going to be, give me the ball. And we know Brandon Aiyuk is good at football. But there is just so much target competition in San Francisco. You have Kittle, who's at 22% of targets. You've got Christian McCaffrey, who'll get 17% of targets. Deebo Samuel actually out-targeted Aiyuk, Kittle, and McCaffrey when all 4 of them were on the field over the last 2 years. Deebo Samuel is the target earner. So, Brandon Aiyuk is the fade, the major fade. Do not be drafting any Brandon Aiyuk in round 2. Now, look. Like we can say that, but if you are a volume best ball drafter, like you're going to take Brandon Aiyuk at the 2-3 turn. You're going to have to wait for that 2-3 turn. I love, like, if you've got like McCaffrey, you can double tap, Debo and Aiyuk sometimes. You can get 3 San Francisco 49ers. That's possibility. But maybe you only go with one of them. You alternate. It's possible. Or you go with like CD Lamb and Debo and then Devonta Smith if you're trying to create some stacking options or correlation for week 17. Maybe you go with some, Sam Laporta, paired with either Debo or Aiyuk. But there's no way that Brandon Aiyuk actually pays off his own individual value. The way you have to talk yourself into Brandon Aiyuk is he is structurally making sense. I need to draft a wide receiver, or I like the Detroit San Francisco week 17 correlation. Like, those are the pathways. But on his face, prima facie, by himself, Brandon Aiyuk is a terrible pick at his ADP. So we want to be avoiding or minimizing our exposures to players like that, where it is a difficult pathway. And right now, the rumors are saying that Brandon Aiyuk is going to stay in San Francisco. So we want to be out on Brandon Aiyuk right now. Aiyuk is my projected, oh, this is gross. You're going to hate this. My projected wide receiver 33 in best ball value rating. What? Yes, Brandon Aiyuk outside the top 24 of wide receivers in terms of what they will offer you for best ball. The ceiling is majorly capped by the other three big-time target earners on his team. I gave Brandon Aiyuk a 25% target share. I gave Brandon Aiyuk 970 receiving yards. I gave Brandon Aiyuk about 120 targets. The problem is the touchdowns. If you're like, put on your coaching hat for a second and pretend that you are Kyle Shanahan for the San Francisco 49ers. Are you going to be going to Brandon Aiyuk as your first option at the goal line? No, it's Christian McCaffrey, who you just gave an extra extension to. Are you going to give it to Debo? Yes, we want to give it to Debo. Run the ball, toss the ball. Oh, there's big George Kittle, also close to the line of scrimmage. Could he run the ball? Could he catch the ball? Yeah, there is a pathway for Aiyuk to actually be number 4 in red zone pecking order. So we want to be out on Brandon Aiyuk in terms of upside. We only saw a couple big games from Brandon Aiyuk last year. His floor is very high. We know he's going to get his targets. He's a safe pick. He's not going to bust for you, but he's not going to pay off in the upside. This was my argument against Jahmyr Gibbs, like the same logic for Jahmyr Gibbs. When you are drafting in the first or second rounds of your fantasy drafts, yes, you do want like guys who are kind of safe, but you also want guys who have a pathway to give you significant return on your draft decision of them. What is the pathway for Brandon Aiyuk to be the wide receiver 5 overall? You would need 2 injuries to either Kittle, McCaffrey, or Debo. And then we can start talking about Brandon Aiyuk as maybe a top 10 receiver for fantasy. We need 2 major injuries long term. So no, we are full fading Brandon Aiyuk in terms of his own value. If you're like, but Bradley, I need some exposure to San Francisco, to Detroit. I need a little bit. Fine. Like if you're a volume guy, okay, fine. That's the only caveat. But on his face, Brandon Aiyuk, outside of the top 24 of wide receivers for 2024. If you like the content and have found this helpful, smash the YouTube subscribe button. My name is Bradley Stalder at FF Stalder on Twitter, on X. Check it out. We've got the draft kit that is dropping this week at Player Profiler. Check it out. If you haven't bought the draft kit, now is the time. Go to playerprofiler.com. Check out when the draft kit will be dropping this week. We'll make announcements about it. We're so excited for the draft kit. I contributed videos and articles and team reviews for that. If you like the content, also check out playerprofiler.com/news and Player Profiler News YouTube channel. There we go. Whew. Lots of fun. Thanks for sticking with me for these flaming hot takes on Wake and Take. Jason is out this week. I'm Bradley Stalder. Until next time, everyone, good luck in the fantasy football streets.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com. Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.